Hey everyone, it is RobbRyder and we're doing this again. People are going to start talking if we keep meeting like this. This is Tuesday, May 26, 2015, and I did one of these yesterday, but I don't remember the name, so it has something to do with what we're about to talk about, and you should watch it, so just search by the upload date. It would have been the 25th. So anyways, mainly I'm going to be talking about the Model State Vital Statistics Act and regulation. And here's another one of these model acts, and I came across some other model acts like the Model Franchise Act and the Model Utility Accounts Act, and there's a number of acts that are actually federal acts, not passed by the federal legislature, but passed by like the Center of Disease Control. And whomever it was. But they're from administrative agencies in the federal government that are being executed by folks that we would think of as holding a position in the state. And they're administering the lower state offices. And lowercase state, which are like the federal state because we have dual sovereignty. But in the state that you think of as the state of Michigan, well, them offices have been vacated. And the people that we think are in them are usurpers of the office because they don't have a proper oath or bond or nothing else. And so it's time to go look elsewhere for something. And as it turns out, there's all these model acts. Well, I was going through some of these the other day, and because of a situation I have in my power company, which I described in the last video, I soon went and looked, and I said, well, look at this. Consumers Energy, who's sending me this bill, doesn't have a franchise to sell me electricity, and it says in the Michigan Constitution that all public utilities have to have a franchise to do business within the township. It's in the Constitution. They don't have one. And so I went and I looked at the ordinances for the township I'm in, and it says in there that they gave an electrical franchise to this other company called Great Lakes something or other, some kind of cooperative, for the wires and the transmission, for like the distribution end of it. But I don't have a contract with them. Apparently I have a contract with Consumers Energy. And so what it really is, and I pointed this out in the law, that when you read this act, right, and use the rules now, because you won't be looking at the laws like the Michigan compiled laws or your statutes or whatever. You need to look at the rules that the organization that you're talking about is supposed to do whatever it is they do with their procedure. And in their procedure, they have rules, I call them, and they need to do it by these particular rules. And well, to say the least, they're not always following the rules, and one of these rules made it the way it's written. Consumers Energy would actually be guilty of putting their meter in somebody else's wires. They're the ones that are stealing the power. Go figure, right? They put their meter in somebody else's wire, somebody that has the franchise with the township to have the wire. Well, then what the hell is a Consumers Energy meter doing in that wire? Well, we're going to find out. So that's one of the things I'm working on. But there's a lot of low-hanging fruit. The Holy Ghost has been good, man. The fruit is getting heavy and big, and these are really, really, really eye-opening ways of seeing how this stuff might work. And again, we haven't done it yet, but all new avenues to try, based on what it says, and that's always a good thing. I'm making this up. I'm going to read you what they say, and then we'll see what they do. So this is the Model State Vital Statistics Act and regulation. It's what they are supposed to do, and it is Tuesday, May 26, 2015. I call by RobbRyder. My email address, the easiest way to get a hold of me, courtofrecord@aol.com. Please don't ask me about some video I did 2 years ago. I really don't remember. My email, and if you can, please donate. It's that time again where, hey, the rent's due, and I'm always short. PayPal account is my daughter's name, Ashley Ritluski. gmail.com, or Robert Rytlewski, snail mail. Pause the video, write it down, get something out of this stuff. Hey, send me a few bucks. Appreciate it. But continuing on. Okay, one other thing, though, that's mind-blowing that we're going to talk about in another video is this. The Fair Debt Collections Practice Act. All right, here's another one of these federal acts. All right, Fair Debt Collection Practice Act. So this is if you're in a foreclosure, you're in a debt, they're coming after you as a debt collector. But not only that, if you have a warrant against you, they could be coming after you as a debt collector, right? Because it just depends on what the definition of a debt is. And all this stuff will be under an administrative council that, well, let's just see who it is. So, as a public service staff of the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC has prepared the following complete text of the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, which is 15 U.S.C. 1692 to 1692P. And I'm not going to go through this whole thing. I just point out a couple things because I'm going to do a video on this later. But, for instance, what's the term of a debt? Means any obligation or alleged obligation. So you don't even need to owe it. It just has to be alleged. It just became a debt of a consumer to pay money arising out of a transaction in which the money, property, insurance, or other services which are subject to the transaction are primarily for personal, family, household purposes, whether or not obligation has been reduced to a judgment. So even if it doesn't matter, there's a judgment that says you owe it, just the fact that somebody alleges you owe it made it a debt. Well, then there's these people that will go collect that debt that's just because somebody said there's a debt without any evidence. And they're going to come collect the debt. And if your body is the collateral, well, then they'll bring in the collateral. So the term debt collector means any person who uses any instrumentality of interstate commerce. Oh, now we just got the commerce division involved. And an instrumentality of interstate commerce would be like the highways. And so if a quasi-policeman was to pull you over using false flags and flashers on the side of a highway and attempt to get you to contract with him in a contract that's really just a simulated legal process to hide the fact that it's antitrust activity they're involved in, which all these things would be under the jurisdiction of the Trade Commission. Principal purpose, which is the collection of any debt, or who regularly collects, attempts to collect, directly or indirectly, debts owed, or due, or asserted to be owed, or due another, notwithstanding the exclusion provided by Clause F of the last sentence of this paragraph. The term includes any creditor who, in the process of collecting his own debts, uses any name other than his own, which would indicate that a third party is collecting or attempting to collect. Wasn't that something? So the creditor not using his own name, does that mean you're not using your proper person? Just became the debtor. Or sentence, paragraph, terms includes, okay, now that's a debt collector, excuse me. The creditor is the debt collector who, in the process of collecting his own debt, uses any name other than his own, which would indicate that a third person is collecting or attempting to collect such debt. For the purpose of Section 808, such terms also include any person who uses any instrumentality of interstate commerce or the mails in any business, the principal purpose of which is to enforce the security's interest. All right, so the security is what you put up for your house, and the interest is, well, whose is it? And somebody's trying to say it's theirs and get somebody else to enforce their rule that it's theirs because you don't know how to defend your rights to say, no, it isn't theirs, it's mine. And it's because we keep going to these fake courts that we, where the black robe priest is. And you can't go to them courts. It's never worked in the Bible, ain't going to work now. That's the ecclesiastic court. and you can't go there. You got to go to the civil side because there's separation of church and state. Yeah, you know, all these things you could think of. And you know, some guy sitting behind a desk with a suit and tie on, and he's got the seal. So really, it just comes down to who has the seal I need on my paperwork for me to have the relief I want. And in debt collection, it may be you go to the FTC and stop trying to fight it in the courtroom. Take them as a debt collector to the FTC and say they're breaking the law. Because, as you'll see here, false or misleading representation. A debt collector may not use any false, deceptive, or misleading representation or means in connection with collection of any debt without limiting the general application of foregoing. The following conduct is in violation of this section. False representation, right? So false statements. A false representation, representation or implication of non-payment. Where's the one about the attorney? Come on. False representation, the sale, false representation, consumer committed any crime, communicating or threatening a person credit information. There was one in here that was specifically about the attorney, and I'm going to miss it because I'm talking and trying to read at the same time. But anyways, one of these just talks about false representation or implication that documents are not legal process forms or do not require action by the consumer. False representation or implication that debt collector operates or employed by consumer reporting agency. I'm going to try one more time. If I don't see it, then I'm afraid I missed it. Just slow down, Bob. Oh, number 3. The false representation or implication that any individual is an attorney or that any communications is from an attorney. Now, I've been harping on this for months, right? If they're not using their proper person name, Robert Allen Rytlewski in my case, instead of Robert A., middle initial Rytlewski, on paperwork that's supposed to be official court documents, right? If they're using the middle initial, then they did it in a false personality because that's not their proper person. That's not the name that's on their license or their authorization to practice law. And they have to certify that with the state some way, somehow. Did lots of videos on this stuff. So there's what you can use. There's your... So if you're going to point out to this FTC or whoever it ends up we're supposed to send this to, per section 807 of Title 15 United States Code, or 15 U.S.C., whatever it says there, 18 something or other. I don't know if Title 15 is a positive law or not, but here it is. Anyways, you just copy and paste this, highlight the part. But this says here, Administrative Enforcement, Federal Trade Commission. The Federal Trade Commission shall be authorized to enforce compliance with this subchapter, except to the extent the enforcement of the required imposed under the subchapter is specifically committed to another government agency under paragraphs 1 through 5 of subsection B. You know, you could go on forever and get yourself confused. Just send it to them and see what they do with it. And let them answer you back with something. If you didn't do it right, well, they'll probably tell you how to do it. But send it to the Federal Trade Commission by whatever their standard is to do it, pointing out that the debt collector is posing as an attorney and he's not using the name that's on his license, and therefore he's in violation of your rule. 807. Section 807. Subsection 3, however you would say that. So this is something we'll be looking at too. I mean, this is just, there's so many things to look at, I can't even keep track anymore. I'm getting confused. I hope you can tell. Okay, I don't need that, but I do need this. Please, if you could, send me something. Okay, let's go look at this thing. This is quite eye-opening all by itself. Okay, live birth. No. You can find this online without too much problem, I would believe. It's called the Model State Vital Statistics Act and Regulations. And this is an act, again, this is from the Centers for Disease Control. CDC wrote the act. Right, this act now is going to be implemented by those in the state, but it's a federal act. Therefore, it's federal law. Therefore, they're not doing it as a state law. They're going to do it as a federal law. And this federal law is going to have rules. This is, this is the administrative side. This is not legislative. Executive side. Right, so this has got lots of definitions. Now, there's one thing that goes with this, and I want to get that out of here also. Along with the Act, they have a U.S. Standard Certificate of Live Birth. And I showed this a little bit yesterday, but just quickly take a look at this form, right? First of all, it's 8.5 by 14, 2 pages. Right? 2 pages. And all you normally see on what you would consider a certificate of live birth is up here to where it says certifier. Everything below that isn't there. They give you, at least for me, they give me this little piece at the top. But this is a U.S. Standard Certificate of Live Birth. And so this is actually the birth certificate we're trying to find, the U.S. Standard Certificate, not this one they've made up for a fondling or a abandoned child, as covered by the Act. But when you look at the words that are on this, now, so please get one of these. I mean, just Google U.S. Standard Certificate of Live Birth. You'll be looking at one. And take it and compare it to whatever one you have now, because these are the items that the federal government has mandated that the state has to collect. Right? So they chose the words, by these words. In other words, mother's name prior to first marriage. It doesn't say mother's maiden name. It says mother's name prior to first marriage. But on the one you would normally get, it's going to say mother's maiden name. So, right, who said they could change it? Because this is, all done by an act. But another big one here is, date filed by registrar. Now, on mine, it says date received by registrar, which is already too late, but it doesn't have a date filed. Look on yours. If it don't have a date filed, because it's going to be mandated in the Act that it has a date filed on it, then you're not looking at the right, whatever it is. It ain't the birth certificate. This is the birth certificate, or the certificate of live birth, which has been filled out, created, whatever, by a couple of things. Now, for instance, just to show you that there is one, specifications for collecting and editing the United States standard birth certificates, or certificates of birth and death, 2003 revision. Right? The United States standard certificates. Yeah. I haven't read it. I just saying, well, there's, obviously that must exist. Well, it gets better. Here's a book that's 251 pages that Bobby in Arizona just called me and told me about this just before I got ready to do this video. I was like, well, okay, what's this about? But what this is, if you wanted to get a copy, I'll leave it on the front page. Report of the panel to evaluate the U.S. standard certificates. If they want to change the certificate, they got to have a big powwow, right? Because, as this thing says, where did it say that? Did I highlight it? Yeah, apparently I didn't. Anyways, what it says is, this is a let's just find it. Take a second. Here we go. The National Vital Statistics System is the basis for the national official statistics on births, deaths, fetal deaths, marriages, divorces. These data are provided through vital registration systems, which are maintained and operated by the individual states and territories where the original certificates are filed. While the legal authority for the vital registration rests with the states and territories, the National Center for Health Statistics is required to produce national vital statistics by compiling data from central vital records offices in all 57 registration areas. Therefore, NHS and CHS closely collaborates with the state to develop standard certificates and reports for data collection and administrative purposes, as well as standardized processes for data preparation and processing to promote a uniform national database. They go to a lot of work to make sure that, the things they want covered are covered. In addition to the requirements of the VSCP, the United States U.S. standard certificates and reports are one of the principal means by which uniformity of data collection and processing are achieved. So they don't want you to mess with their damn forms. To ensure that the standard certificates and reports and the items they contain meet health information and administrative needs, they are reviewed approximately every 10 to 15 years. The current standard certificates and report have been used since 1989. Implementation of the standard certificates was originally planned in 2002, and blah, 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 blah. So, right, if they're going to change them, that's what this whole book is about, is apparently the one they had been using was 1989, and this was back in 2000, so 10 years, it was time to look at changing it again, and that's what they talked about. And they're talking about this form right here. And I would believe that this one here is the latest version. And now I'm not going to spend a lot of time looking at the form. We're just going to look at the law. But I do want you to, if you do have yours, to get it and go look at this. And at the very bottom of page, because really the form's 2 pages, right? There's that little note on the bottom. Was infant transferred within 24 hours of delivery? Yes or no? If yes, name the facility infant transferred. Right? So you're in the delivery and you're going to get transferred into the hospital. But you were delivered in the delivery and then transferred in the hospital. Is infant living at time of report? Yes, no, or infant transferred, status unknown. The delivery no longer knows. They don't have them. They went to the hospital. In the hospital, they're going to not know who the baby is, and it's going to get adopted out. It seems to be what they do. But nevertheless, this form had to be filled out for you. And in the law, it has to be done within 5 days. So if it doesn't, then where's this form? Because this being properly registered is what's going to give you your status as a national in the United States. It's never been properly registered because it wasn't done in time. And if that's a problem with somebody and they could make it a problem, say, well, we can't take it. It wasn't done in time. Doesn't matter if all the information is correct. No, we can't register it. So that's why it's real important to have this thing here. Date filed by registrar. When did it actually get filed to say it was okay? And the ones that they give us today don't have that on there. So it's a version of this, but it isn't this. It's one that the state registrar is going to have made up. Okay, let's look at the law. Enough of that talking. Papers. The Act itself. Just look at some definitions first. Registration means the process by which vital records are completed, filed, and incorporated into official records of the, and then it has, in parentheses, of Office of Vital Statistics. But if things in parentheses really aren't there, then it kind of ended of the, and we don't know where it is, right? But they say the Office of Vital Statistics. The system of vital statistics means the registration, collection, preservation, amendment, and certification of vital records the collection of other reports required by this Act, and activities related thereto, including the tabulation, analysis, publication, dissemination of vital statistics. What we want to get is the system of vital statistics, because that has all the paperwork. That's like the file. And then there's all these separate records, but that's the file. It's called the System of Vital Statistics. Vital records mean certificates or reports of birth, death, marriage, blah, 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 right? A vital record can be any one of those. You can have many vital records. But there's one system of vital statistics that has to do with you. Vital reports means reports of fetal death and induced termination or of pregnancy and data related thereto. And vital statistics means data derived from certificates and reports of birth and death and blah, 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 blah. Right? So the system of vital statistics is the complete package of all the pieces of paper that had to do with the registration or whatever of the child, of the birth. And we want to make sure it's been properly recorded. Office of Vital Statistics, a statewide system of vital statistics. Now remember, this is a federal law that they're going to tell the state what to do. There is hereby established in the state Public Health Administrative Agency, an Office of Vital Statistics, which shall install, maintain, operate the only system of vital statistics throughout the state. The Office of Vital Statistics shall be provided with sufficient staff, suitable offices, other resources, proper administration of the system, vital statistics, and for preservation and security of its official records. The State Public Health Administrative Agency, hereafter referred to as the State Agency, is authorized to adopt, amend, and repeal regulations for the purpose of carrying out the provisions of this Act. So they can adopt, amend, or repeal how they're going to do the Act, but not what they're going to do with the Act, just how they're going to do it. And in Michigan, then, if I'm looking at mine, then the this one here, Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, birth, death, marriage, divorce records. This is the vital records person they're talking about. All right, that's the Office of Vital Statistics. And then this one, this is the director of the overall agency. And that would be, all right, so that's him. He's the State Health Administrative Agency. That's the state agency. Now, the State Health Officer, I guess that would be him. So I need to look at that again. Yeah, state agency. Right, so now he's the officer. And he is actually Nick Lyon. Nick! He's a, who's he? I think he's a Yale man. Skull and bones, man. Hope it works out to our benefit. Okay. Appointment of the State Registrar of Vital Statistics. The State Health Department, Nick, shall appoint the State Registrar of Vital Statistics, hereinafter referred to as the State Registrar. This is who the State Registrar is. The State Registrar is the State Registrar of Vital Statistics. Who's that? Division of Vital Records and Health Statistics, Glenn Copeland, State Registrar. He's the State Registrar. So he's the one who's tasked with doing all these things. And I don't know if that's the State Registrar I thought of it was before, but we're going to find out. The State Registrar shall administer and enforce the provisions of this Act and the regulations issued hereunder, and issue instructions for the efficient administration of the system of vital statistics. Okay, well, now we're getting into what they have to do. This is their rules and what the State Registrar shall do, and the State Registrar shall not do that. Then my recourse isn't to the Black Robe Priest Court, it's to this dude, Nick. However, it won't be him necessarily, because it could be him. Now, this is how this works. Now, it could be him, or this whole entity could have a administrative law tribunal, and it's going to go to them. And so I got to go look at the law to see how it says to do it. But at the end of the day, that's where the remedy is, not running over to the other court to try to put something in with a federal judge or any of this other stuff. You need to go to this guy's boss. Content of certificates and reports. In order to promote and maintain nationwide uniformity in the system of vital statistics, the form of certificates and reports required by this Act or by regulation adopted hereunder shall include, as a minimum, the items recommended by the federal agency responsible for national vital statistics. And, well, we've seen what they have to work with, right? They want you to use this form here. Both pages. If you're not using that one, then you're not using the model that you've been given to use. All means all. All vital records shall contain, shall, the date of filing, not the date it was received. The date of filing. If you don't see the date of filing on it, I don't care if you know what else to look at, right? If you just know to go look for the date of filing and say, well, where's the date of filing? If it ain't got it, then it ain't the right one. Say, I want the one that's got the date of filing on it. Or walk in with this, go print this out and say, see where it says right here, this is the one. Section 6, this is what I want. Or 7, birth registration, a certificate of birth for each live birth which occurs in the States shall be filed with the Office of Vital Statistics or as otherwise directed by the State Registrar within 5 days. Mine said 13, the one they gave me, so somebody either just broke a federal law or there's another one that was recorded someplace else. As directed, right? Now this says with the Office of Vital Statistics or as otherwise directed by the State Registrar within 5 days. So where did Glenn decide to send the records? Because the ones we're getting from the county say, we didn't get it till 9 days later. And this says it had to be within 5. 5. Shall. You're breaking a federal law. Right? This is a federal rule. It's a federal matter. Therefore, 18 U.S.C. 1001, false Statements Accountability Act of 1996. You can get that certified. Bobby did it. Good for you, Bob. When a birth occurs in an institution or en route thereto, the person in charge of the institution or his or her authorized designee shall obtain the personal data, prepare the certificate, certify the child was born alive, and place the time on the day. Yada, yada, yada. Now, they have these worksheets they do, and I didn't find the worksheets to put in here. But it's called a birth certificate worksheet. But there's like more than one. There's one that goes to the lady having the baby, and then they're filling one out also within the hospital. There's more than one, and it's birth certificate worksheet. Right? Google that, and you'll get an idea what I'm talking about. These are all these other documents that would all come together under the heading of, who remembers? A system of vital statistics. You don't need to remember. You just need to copy the law and highlight it. And say, I know it's one of these highlighted ones. I can just forget everything else I'm looking at. And blah, blah, blah. Oh, highlight. Let's stop and read. Why is it highlighted? Oh, because a certificate of birth for each live birth which occurs in the state shall be filed with the Office of Vital Statistics or as otherwise directed by the State Registrar within 5 days after such birth, and shall be registered if it has been completed and filed in accordance with this section, and shall be registered if it has been completed and filed in accordance with this section. If it don't have a frickin' date filed on it, it wasn't done. and somebody didn't follow the law, and it's not your fault. Right? So fix the error, and it's really not that person's fault standing there because it happened. This happened years ago. So forgive everybody. Just say fix it, man, and give me my property. When a birth occurs in an institution en route, there too the person in charge of the institution, his or her authorized designee, shall obtain the information, file a certificate as directed in 7A. Now, Bobby in Arizona talked to the people at the hospital where his son was born, and they said they don't send any paper to anybody. They fill some stuff out online that's supposed to go to the county, and then the hard copy forms get stored someplace off-site. And that's really all she knows about it. Infants of unknown parentage, founding registration. Whoever assumes the custody of a live-born infant of unknown parentage shall report on a form and in a manner prescribed by the State Registrar within 5 days to the Office of Vital Statistics the following information. So now it doesn't have to be the United States form. Now this can be a form that's been made up by the State Registrar from the Office of Vital Statistics. And I guess if that was the case, then, you wouldn't expect it to say U.S. Standard Certificate of Live Birth at the top. But apparently it does, right? Because here we're looking at a copy. Where's this one? Right? Where's this one? Where's this one? Where's this one? You don't just be a parrot, man. Where is it? You're concealing this from me. Well, that's a crime, man. You're concealing a material fact. That is a violation of 18 U.S.C. 1001. The omission of a material fact. And we hope they just say, hey, we didn't know what's going on here. Take your stuff and go. And we can all live happily ever after. The place where the child was found shall be entered in the place of birth as the place of birth. And I think that's why on most of these where it says the place of birth, it'll have the county, Bay City, place, Bay Orthopedic Hospital. Instead of place being the unincorporated place that your township is, the unincorporated federal district, that is considered a place, and that's where you should be registered at because that's the elemental republic. But they don't want us to register there. But that's all fits together, in my head better. So, but is there a remedy? Well, let's see. Judicial procedure to establish facts of birth. If the state agency registrar refuses to file a certificate of birth under the provisions of 7 or 9, a petition signed and sworn to by the petitioner may be filed with a court of competent jurisdiction. Now we need to think about who that is. No, it's not the black robe priest. Of course not. They don't understand a word you're saying. You need to take it to the guy's boss. That's to the administrative judge. Right? We just need a court order. They didn't say which court. They tell you we need a court order. Well, let's go see your administrative law judge and get one. You go, you need to get the person at the bottom to get the authorization from the person on top. That's who you're looking for, is his boss to say yes. Give him the damn record. Not for somebody in another branch of government that has nothing to do with the situation to do it. What you think of as a court doesn't really have any place to be in the administrative branch of the government. But there are administrative courts, and that's what we need to use. We need to be pointing out the right thing, and that is, hey, you're not following the rule, and this is what you're supposed to enforce is this procedure right here. Such petition shall be made on a form prescribed and furnished and approved by the State Registrar and shall allege. So you're going to have to get the form from the State Registrar. Who's the State Registrar? State Registrar of Michigan is Glenn Copeland in the Division of Vital Records and Health Statistics. And why is it him? Well, because that's where the birth, death, marriage, and divorce records are. Located at 201 Townsend Street, Capitol View Building. Third floor, Lansing, Michigan, across the street from the state capitol. Like to have it close. Certificates of adoption. For each adoption decree by court of competent jurisdiction in the state, the court shall require the preparation of a certificate of adoption, form prescribed and furnished by State Registrar. So the State Registrar is going to make that form up too. Go figure. And the reason I think that there's something to do with this adoption is because you were given a guardian ad litem, possibly. So one scenario how this all worked is somebody funds your estate as a baby. It's not your mom and dad; they don't have any money, right? And it's your adoptive family, whoever it is, and a guardian ad litem then takes your estate and farms it for you, so that it gathers every year. It's making something for you because you can't own property as a infant. But then at some age, right, the age of reason or whatever it is, we're going to go fill something out and put it into a trust instead of, using it for our own advantage. And somebody is out there wanting to administer your trust, your account, or tap your account because you don't know it's your account. And part of that was to make all this happen is they had to get rid of your proper person, your Robert Allen Ritlewski, your proper name. He never goes to court. It's always Ritlewski, Robert Allen, right? Or the tax forms in Robert A. Ritlewski. How my utility bill is in Robert A. Ritlewski. It's not in Allen. So that's why I say, well, this must be federal and somehow get all the way to federal. And I believe the Federal Trade Commission, they have jurisdiction over cable, utilities, motor carriers. Do police cars have DOT stickers on them? Are they under the Department of Transportation? Right? Because if they did, that would make them susceptible to this idea that they're just motor carriers. Right? And their service is to carry the debt, and that's you, from one place to the other. I didn't mention you're going to be in handcuffs. Certificates of birth following adoption, blah, 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 blah. I don't know if there's any more on here that I really needed to cover. But it does go into death, and I just want to say this. I believe that when we get death certificates from our loved ones, that we're supposed to go and register those someplace to complete the process, and then your ancestors' inheritance, which is all lined up between you and your last departed ancestor, or if there's, I guess if you're the last living one in your line, or not necessarily the last, but you don't have a father, mother, grandfather, grandmother, all your line is passed, then if you were to properly register their death certificates, it would allow their inheritance to come forward to you, because an inheritance is actually everything that isn't given away by a will. I remember reading that in one of these old law books someplace. Right? That's what the inheritance is everything not given to somebody by will, and then it's inherited equally between everybody else. So here's what I wanted you to have. You can have my clock, you can have my table, you can have my whatever, and then everything else, I just split it up equally between you all. That's the inheritance, the part that gets split equally. And we've never collected our ancestors' inheritance because we're not putting in that the fact that they did pass away, and so the records are never being updated properly. Then they weren't updated properly going in, they won't be updated properly going out, but after 100 years, it'll show you were born and that you died. So, okay, this is the next thing, right, is it's just two pretty simple documents. Model State Vital Statistics Act and regulations. And in 2011, they were doing an update, and so it may not look like this, but I don't know that it's ever gone into effect yet. I still believe this to be the one. And it's from 1992. And that and the form. Right? Get this form and start checking it out. And there really isn't any place. Like I haven't looked at mine, so I don't really remember. But Bobby was telling me today on his son's, where the child's name goes is broken up into 3 blocks. Right? Where here it's just your proper person name. On that one, it's broken up into 3 blocks. So right from the very first, other than the first name being the same, there really wasn't anything after that that was the same as what this form shows. Up to this block 13, date filed by registrar. Father's current legal name. That isn't how they say it. And they don't say mother's name prior to first marriage. They say on the damn form, mother's maiden name. Like they're not married, right? If they did it this way, that would be they're acknowledging that she is married. And your marriage was never solemnized. And I should point, I wonder if I have that on here, because where was that? So anyways, this place is supposed to have the birth, death, and marriage and divorce records, right? However, marriage record corrections are handled by the clerk of the county where the marriage took place. Divorce records are court documents that must be corrected by the same court that finalized the divorce. Right? So your marriage and divorce records really aren't in this office. They should be, but they're not. And you don't go there to get them fixed. You go to the county because your marriage was never properly solemnized. It's supposed to be a sacrament. There may have been a civil union performed, but the sacrament of marriage wasn't performed. So you were never married, therefore all your children are bastards, and there you go. Want proof? Go look at the birth certificate. It's going to have mom and her maiden name. Not the name after first marriage. Mom's name prior to first marriage. Well, yeah, you'd say, well, that's her maiden name, but that isn't how they said it. And this is the form they want filled out. And they may change the form from time to time, but this is still the form they want filled out. And this form should have been filled out. And where the heck is the form? And if it isn't, well, then it's time to go and get the, wasn't that far down here? All right, you didn't have to go very far to get an answer or to get, what was this? Oh, you can do amendments to them also. I haven't finished reading all this, so please forgive me. I just think it's too important not to say something about it. It's like, well, this is good juju. 9, where's 10? Okay, judicial procedure. So the judicial procedure, if the state agency, right, so that's the guy at the top, that's the agency, and then the registrar. So if I go to Glenn first and he won't do it, and then I go to Nick and he won't do it, then a petition may be filed with the court of competent jurisdiction for any order establishing a record of the date, place, blah, 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 blah. Well, who that is here in Michigan is the, because now I would have gone to Nick, who's the guy that's over the agency. It would be, where is that guy? In Michigan, it's called the State Administrative Board. By an act passed in 1921. The State Administrative Board has general supervisory control over all administrative activities of all departments and agencies, including but not limited to blah, 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 blah. This is the Supreme Court in this case. Nick is the appeals court, and Glenn is the first court. He's the court of first instance. If he says no, Then I go to Nick. If he says no, then I go to the State Administrative Board. And the board's made up of the governor, the lieutenant governor, secretary of state, attorney general, state treasurer, superintendent of public, blah, blah, blah. All these people are on that board. And they're the ones that have superintending control over everything, all the state agencies. So, just a little bit different way of looking at it, and lots to look at, and my head is always full, and I hope I'm making sense, but at the end of the day, that's what we'll be doing next. We're going to go find out where them damn registration forms are and get our proper person properly registered. Okay.